Hey everyone, and welcome back to another What's for Dinner video. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Stephanie and I love making these videos to give you some new dinner ideas and inspiration. So this week I have 3 very simple but amazingly delicious meals to share with you. So let's head on over to the kitchen and let's get started. To start off the week, I am making this delicious one-pot cheesy sausage pasta. So to get started, you're going to need about a pound of sliced up smoked sausage. Then you're going to heat up some oil in a pan, about 1 tablespoon or so, and you're going to add in 1 chopped onion. I'm just going to quickly season this with some salt and pepper, and then I'm going to add in my sausages. Going to give this a quick stir, and then I'm going to let this cook until the sausages are lightly browned. Now I'm adding 1 heaping tablespoon of minced garlic, and I'm going to let this cook for another 30 seconds till it becomes fragrant. I'm now going to add 2 cups of chicken broth. Then I'm going to add half a cup of heavy cream, which is also called whipping cream. And I'm also going to add a 10-ounce can of diced tomatoes. I'm using the one with Italian spices just to give it even more flavor. Now I'm adding half a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of pepper, and half a teaspoon of Italian seasoning. Going to mix this well. Now I'm going to add in my pasta. I'm using bow ties, but you can use whichever pasta that you prefer. This is about 3 cups of pasta. Going to mix this well. Then I'm going to bring this to a boil. I'm going to cover it and let it simmer for about 15 minutes until my pasta is cooked. So now that my pasta is cooked, I'm going to turn off the heat, remove the lid, and I'm going to stir in half a cup of cheese. I'm using some Monterey Jack with jalapenos that I mixed together with some cheddar cheese. I think this is the perfect blend for this dish. It's so good. Then I'm going to add some more cheese on top. Going to cover it and just let it sit for about 5 minutes till the cheese is completely melted. So as you can see, the cheese is melted, so now I'm just going to top this off with some green onions and then I'll be ready to serve. So this is what it looks like once it's all done. This meal was fantastic and so simple to put together. I highly recommend that you try this one. It was absolutely delicious, so much flavor in this one. My family loved it and I'll definitely be making it again. Next, I am making a super simple ground Mongolian beef ramen. So I'm going to start off with the sauce. I'm going to mix together 1 tablespoon of sesame oil with 2 cloves of minced garlic. I'm also going to add 1 teaspoon of minced ginger, followed by 1/4 cup of brown sugar, 1/4 cup of water. I'm also adding 1/4 cup of soy sauce, half a teaspoon of red pepper flakes, and half a teaspoon of sesame seeds. Going to quickly whisk this together. Now in a large skillet, I'm going to cook my ground beef. I have 1 pound of ground beef here, and I'm just going to break it apart, and I'm going to season it with a little bit of salt and pepper, and I'm going to let this cook all the way through. Once the ground beef is cooked, you're going to want to drain the excess fat, which I've already done. So now I'm going to add in my sauce and let this cook for another 5 minutes. In the meantime, you want to cook 2 packages of ramen noodles, and you're only using the noodles, you don't need the seasoning packets. Alright, so my ramen noodles are cooked. I've drained the water, so now I'm going to add them to my beef and I'm going to toss this till well combined. Now I'm just adding some green onions on top, and then that's it, we're ready to serve. This was absolutely delicious. We really liked this one a lot. I feel like this was a really great week in meals. We really enjoyed all of these. The one thing I do want to mention about this one is if you're feeding a large family, then you'll want to double the recipe. My kids don't eat stuff like this, so for us it wasn't a problem. It was just Daniel and I, but after we were done, there was hardly any left. So if my 3 kids were to eat this, I would definitely have to double it. But like I said, this was truly fantastic, super easy to make, full of flavor. If you like Asian food, then give this one a try. I'm sure you will love it. Next up, I am making some Salisbury steak. To start off, I have a pound of ground beef here, and I'm going to add in half of a chopped onion. as well as 2 cloves of minced garlic. Now I'm adding 1/3 of a cup of panko breadcrumbs, followed by 1 egg, 1½ teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce, and 2 teaspoons of mayonnaise. I'm also going to add 1 teaspoon of salt, ½ teaspoon of black pepper, and ½ teaspoon of Italian seasonings. Then I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of ketchup, as well as 2 teaspoons of Dijon mustard, and then finally 1½ teaspoon of milk. So now with clean hands, I'm just going to mix this all together. You can also use gloves if you don't want to touch the raw meat with your hands. Also, it's important to not overmix the meat. Burgers and even meatloaf or meatballs, they tend to be more tender if you handle the meat as little as possible. Then you're just going to shape these into 4 round patties, just like this. I'm now going to take these over to the stove where I've heated up 1 tablespoon of oil over medium-high heat. I'm going to add in my patties and I'm going to wait about 4 to 5 minutes before flipping them over. Now I'm going to let these cook all the way through, and in the meantime I'm going to get started on my gravy. So here in a bowl I'm adding 2 tablespoons of flour. I'm also adding 1½ cup of beef broth and ½ cup of water. Now I'm adding ½ teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce, followed by ½ teaspoon of Dijon mustard, 2 teaspoons of ketchup, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of black pepper. Going to whisk this together until everything is combined and then set it aside. So now my burgers are done. I'm going to remove them from the pan and I'm going to make sure to cover them to keep them nice and hot. I've now removed the excess grease from the pan, and now in the same pan I'm adding half of a thinly sliced onion, and I'm going to let this cook till they start to become tender. Now I'm adding in 2 cloves of minced garlic and let this cook for another 30 seconds till it becomes fragrant. Up next, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of unsalted butter. Going to let that melt, and then I'm going to add about 8 ounces of sliced up brown mushrooms. Going to season them with a little bit of salt and pepper, and I'm going to let these cook until brown, till they look like this. Now I'm going to add in my gravy and let this cook until it thickens up. So to go along with this, I decided to make some asparagus. So I've lined up some asparagus here on a sheet pan lined with parchment paper, and I've seasoned them with some kosher salt, black pepper, and some garlic powder. I don't have any measurements for this, so just measure it with your heart, and you can use whichever seasonings that you prefer. Now I'm just going to sprinkle some Parmesan cheese on top. Going to drizzle it with some olive oil, and then with my hands, I'm just going to toss it all up till everything is well coated. Going to pop this in the oven at 400 degrees for about 10 minutes. It all depends on how tender you like them. Now back to the stove. As you can see, the gravy is still pretty thin. I like my gravy to be nice and thick, so I'm just going to add in a slurry to thicken it up. Here I just mixed together 1 tablespoon of cornstarch with 1 tablespoon of cold water, and I'm just going to stir that in. And this can be used to thicken up any kind of sauce or gravy. Just do equal parts cornstarch to equal parts cold water. Maybe start with 1 or 2 tablespoons at first, and then you can always add more if you want it thicker. So as you can see, the sauce is much thicker now, or at least I hope you can see it. But now I'm going to add my patties back in, and I'm going to scoop some of the mushroom sauce on top, and then I'm just going to let this cook until my patties are heated all the way through. So here is the finished product. I served this over some creamy mashed potatoes and with the asparagus that we made earlier. This was so good, just what I needed on this cold, rainy day. If you like Salisbury steak, then I highly recommend you try this recipe. It is so good, so delicious. I hope you give it a try. That is it for today. I hope you enjoyed cooking along with me, and I hope you will give some of these recipes a try. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.